Welcome to Honeybee, real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. My name is Nicholas. The moment my wife looked straight into my eyes and told me she wanted to start living only for herself, without me, my reply changed everything between us permanently. I first met Dorothy at a professional networking event several years ago. She was working in human resources for an international company, while I had just begun my career as a financial consultant. That night, when we started talking, I was struck by how driven she was and how thoughtfully she spoke about her work. Our relationship developed naturally a few months later. We'd squeeze in coffee dates between our busy schedules, spend weekends at museums, and take evening walks while talking about everything from world events to our childhood memories. Dorothy seemed truly invested in building a meaningful partnership, and she supported my career ambitions while actively pursuing her own. 2 years later, after dating steadily, we married in a simple ceremony that felt just right for us. She moved into the house I'd purchased a year before with money I had inherited from my grandfather, a 3-bedroom suburban home with a modest yard. It was fully paid off, and to me, it represented the kind of stability I wanted to give to my future family. The first couple of years of our marriage were exactly what I had hoped for. Dorothy loved the house and never complained about it or hinted that she wanted something bigger. She had her own job and income, but she seemed comfortable with our arrangement. I handled the cost of the mortgage-free home, while she covered groceries and utilities. We each kept our own accounts, but also set up a joint one for shared savings and expenses. Everything felt balanced. Back then, Dorothy's social life was minimal. She had a few friends from work and some college acquaintances she occasionally contacted, but most of her free time was spent with me or on her hobbies. She went out with coworkers now and then, but never in a way that clashed with our marriage. I felt secure, convinced that the woman I had married valued our relationship, and understood that marriage meant making choices together and considering each other's well-being. But things shifted around our 3rd year of marriage. Dorothy reconnected with some college sorority friends through social media. They had started arranging frequent meetups in our city, and she was thrilled to reconnect. At first, I was glad, happy she was widening her social circle again. One of them was divorced twice and working as a real estate agent. Loud and outspoken, she was bitter about marriage, often saying she had wasted her 20s and early 30s trying to please men instead of herself. She was now on a mission to embrace her independence, and was quick to urge other women to do the same. The other friend had never married, but had a string of long relationships that all ended badly. She worked in event planning and lived a very social life, always arranging group outings and spontaneous adventures. She thrived on being the fun, carefree friend who could persuade anyone to drop everything for a night out. At first, Dorothy's renewed friendships seemed harmless. She went out with them once in a while, and came home with funny stories and updates. Since we had moved to a new city after getting married, I thought it was healthy for her to have close female friends again. But as the months passed, I noticed troubling changes in Dorothy. She started coming home with new complaints about our marriage, things that had never been issues before. Suddenly, my asking where she was going or when she'd be home was labeled as controlling. She began criticizing women who, in her view, had become too dependent on their husbands or had lost their sense of self by prioritizing family over personal desires. The biggest shift came in how she spoke about the future. She had always used we when discussing plans. Now, she focused on what she wanted, rarely including me in her vision. I told myself this was just a phase, normal exploration, nothing to worry about. I didn't want to become the kind of husband who felt threatened by his wife's friendships. But by the 4th year of our marriage, those friendships had become the center of her life. She was going out with them at least twice a week, staying out later and later, sometimes past midnight on weeknights. The conversation she brought home felt almost designed to create friction between us. She'd tell me about her divorced friend's controlling ex or her unmarried friend's breakup with a man who didn't want her traveling alone. Then she'd look at me closely, as if testing my reaction. Even the decisions we had once made together, like me covering household expenses, were suddenly reframed as evidence of me trying to keep her financially dependent. Wanting us to discuss big choices as a couple was painted as me not trusting her judgment. But she never brought these issues up directly. Instead, she'd toss out passive-aggressive remarks or trap-like questions. If I tried to calmly address her concerns, she accused me of being defensive. Her social media also started filling up with posts about women's independence and relationship equality, thinly veiled commentary on our marriage. When I expressed discomfort with her friend's influence, she became secretive, hiding calls or stepping outside to talk. Arguments became constant. Even minor disagreements spiraled into accusations about my character. If I mentioned her late nights affecting our time together, she accused me of trying to control her. The breaking point came in our 5th year. Dorothy announced she was taking a week-long trip to Las Vegas with her college friends. Not a discussion, just a statement. Flights and hotels were already being planned. When I questioned the trip, she blew up, accusing me of treating her like property, of being insecure and jealous. She compared me unfavorably to her friend's boyfriend, who never questioned her choices. She insisted I was holding her back from living her life freely. That fight dragged on for hours. What shocked me most was that Dorothy seemed almost energized by the conflict, like she had been waiting for this moment. It ended with her declaring she'd go no matter what I thought, and if I had a problem, that was my issue. Afterward, she shut down completely. She moved into the guest room and treated me like a roommate. For weeks, we lived in silence. She'd leave before I woke up, come home late, and spend weekends out. She had her friends for emotional support. I was simply ignored. I hoped she'd calm down and that we could talk it out. I even researched marriage counselors and thought about suggesting therapy or making some gesture to break the ice. I even considered letting her take the trip just to keep the peace. But Dorothy wasn't interested in resolution. She seemed perfectly comfortable with the standoff, waiting for me to surrender completely. The end came on a Thursday evening. I came home late from work to find her sitting at the dining table, papers spread out, divorce documents. She wasn't even wearing her ring. Calmly, she told me she no longer wanted to check in with me or consider my feelings. She said she deserved to be happy, and that meant no longer being married. I surprised us both with my response. I didn't beg or argue. I simply told her if she wanted to live for herself, she was free to do so, but not in my home and not on my money. Her jaw literally dropped. She had expected me to fight, cry, beg. Instead, I drew a line. That shock turned to fury when I reminded her that the house was mine, bought before our marriage with inheritance money, with only my name on the deed. She thought she had rights to half, and her lawyer apparently assumed the same. But when my attorney reviewed everything, it was clear the house was separate property. The divorce dragged out for 14 months. Her lawyer tried every angle, claiming her household labor contributed to the home, or that her covering groceries freed up my income. Each argument was dismantled with documentation. In court, Dorothy's anger often got the best of her, leading to emotional outbursts that weakened her case. When the divorce finalized, she left with her share of the joint savings, her personal belongings, and her car. She asked for spousal support, but the judge denied it, noting the marriage was short and that she had a strong earning capacity. She had expected a 6-figure windfall, but instead walked away with far less. The months after were strange but freeing. I stayed in the house, slowly removing reminders of her. It was lonely, but it was also liberating. Dorothy moved in with a friend, posting frequently about her new single life. I occasionally heard updates. She was dating, going out often, living the independence she had fought for. 2 years later, out of nowhere, Dorothy called. She admitted she was struggling financially. Her settlement was gone. She had quit her job, and now she was behind on rent. She asked me for money, promising to repay me once she found work. The irony was staggering. The woman who once said she wanted to live entirely for herself, now asking me to bail her out. She even said she hoped we could still be friends and support each other. I listened, then reminded her of her own words years earlier. She wanted to live for herself, without me. That was exactly what she was doing now. When I refused, she grew angry, accusing me of being cruel, petty, and vindictive. But I had finally learned the truth. Dorothy's idea of independence was freedom to make choices without me, while still expecting me to absorb the consequences. I wished her well, but told her I would no longer be part of her support system. Then I blocked her number. Looking back, I see how her behavior had been shifting for a long time. The lesson I learned is clear. Real independence in marriage means balancing individuality with partnership. Dorothy wanted all the freedom with none of the responsibility. Her friends only fueled this mindset, encouraging her to see me as oppressive rather than as her partner. She wanted validation for being selfish, and they gave it to her, dressed up as empowerment. In the end, the best thing I ever did was let her face the consequences of her choices. Today, I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who understands that marriage is about shared decisions and mutual respect. We maintain our own identities, but always put our partnership first. Dorothy taught me that love without respect and cooperation isn't enough. And while the lesson was painful, it was invaluable. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not helping her when she reached out. I tell them no. The kindest thing I could do was respect the independence she demanded and not undermine it by rescuing her. Dorothy wanted to live for herself. And in the end, that's exactly what she got.